Okay, welcome. Welcome to, I feel, the premier event at this conference where we get to really go deep into the UFO question with what I call one of the best panels that has been assembled on the subject. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes. And there's 100 people live streaming too. So anyway, my name's Alan Steinfeld. I host a show called New Realities on YouTube. You could see lots of different interviews with many of the guests here. But I think because we are coming to a new phase in understanding what ETs and UFOs are about, it's an evolution. This panel, for me, represents a way of putting together a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, a lot of connecting the dots, because if you listen to Ray's talk, you know, and everyone here, it's not just about people from other planets visiting us and checking us out. There's something else going on here. And if everyone here can sort of gear towards their little piece and their little dot, maybe we can all connect the dots and create a bigger story of what's going on. I mean, I don't think anyone has the whole picture, although many people are close. My good friend Whitley has, you know, he's as close and as lucid as you can get to almost touching the thing as it touches him in his ear, you know, his implant in his ear. He's always in touch with it. So let me just introduce the panelists, and then I'll throw out a couple of questions, and then I think a discussion amongst the panelists, and then we'll take some questions. But like I said, Whitley Strieber, the author of Communion and many other amazing books, has been a warrior on the frontiers of consciousness, because it's that image of that being on the front of the book, that with the big eyes, that have set the iconic understanding of what ETs are. But if you read those books, and you read one of his latest books, Supernatural, it's an evolution that awakened, I think, for you, that you're still coming to terms with. Is that true, Whitley? You want to comment?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Okay, and then we'll ask for comment. And Barbara Lamb, who's dedicated her life to understanding the abduction experience and taking people into regression and showing a really positive side to this experience, that it is about human conscious evolution. You would agree with that? Okay. Just making sure we're on the same page. And one of the newcomers to the block there, although his work is so important with the free organization and his 7,000-person study about what is the true nature of the contact abduction experience and what that means in terms of statistics, Ray Hernandez has done incredible work just in the last few years on that.
It's not just me. It was an entire group of over 20 individuals, and Barbara was part of that team.
Great.
I want to thank her here at the stage.
Oh, thank you.
Yay, Barbara.
So, also I want to acknowledge the work of the Hurtaks, who really one of the early investigators since the 1970s. They've been publicly exploring who's visiting our planet. What are these extraterrestrial races? But not just extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, UTs, interdimensional, cosmic beings. How does that interface with who we are? What is their real message here? So I'm happy you're both here, Dr. J.J. Hurtak, Dr. Desiree Hurtak. Thank you for that. Is that true? When did you start your work, J.J.?
Thanks, Alan.
Actually, it was in the early 70s, 71, 72.
Mm-hmm. Right. And thank you for continuing. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Desiree. Travis Walton, again, is one of the heroes of our team here. He has withstood ridicule and slander just for saying what happened to him. Just for, hey, I mean, you weren't exactly an innocent bystander, but you were just standing by, and boom. But, you know, 45 years later, people are still questioning about, hey, did this really happen? I mean, if the story was you've held to your story because it's the truth. I mean, that's your experience. What's that? Was that a comment? Anyway, thank you, Travis, for being here. And I introduce my good friend, Phil Gruber. We practically grew up together. Phil actually really introduced me to the whole field of this conscious awareness, and I'm not sure of your understanding about ETs, Phil. Do you want to give us a brief, description of what your relationship to the extraterrestrial, or what the cosmic consciousness?
No.
Okay. That's why he's my best friend, sure. Never answers my question directly. Okay, we'll get back to you. And Jason Quitt, I think you represent the next generation, the millennial understanding of what's going on here and this integration of a spiritual consciousness. Would you have any comments about that? About you're representing a kind of new wave of people?
Yeah, sure. Basically, my whole life, or growing up, I thought this was completely normal and everybody knew about being a multidimensional being and leaving your body. And then I started to talk to people about it, and I realized I had to shut up. So,
right, exactly.
It's good to bring it out publicly. It's part of the healing process, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so that's our ground rule. That's our framework here, and then we'll take some comments. So let me start with Whitley. I just want to acknowledge Whitley and Travis are really some of the foundational contactees in this whole field. I mean, they've opened up people's minds to so much possibility. So Whitley, in your understanding from making contact, and then he wrote a book called Supernatural, which puts the whole thing into a new perspective. What do you make sense of now in terms of who these visitors are and what they're trying to do to help our evolution?
Well, thank you for asking me a simple question that I can answer easily.
Okay. There's no simple answer.
I think that because of our bodies, there's nothing wrong with any of this. We are kind of living behind a barrier, and the barrier is the physical body and our senses, which direct us out into the physical world around us, and they do that because we need to sustain this very complicated, big, blood-filled, organ-filled machinery. And so we're very fixated on the material world. And as over time the material world has become richer and richer, we have become spiritually poorer and poorer. And what is happening now is, on one level, an attempt to reintroduce us to this lost or abandoned level of ourselves. Because for almost all of us, the soul is very hypothetical, even those of us who say, well, we have a soul. We can't actually sense anything on that level. We're anesthetized to it. And the result of this is that the whole thing has kind of gone off the rails, where there are now way too many of us. There's nobody to blame, by the way. The visitors explained to me a long time ago that it's about population pressure, that all this violence and so forth you see in our societies has to do with an instinctive response to overpopulation. And, they're not interested in our politics or anything at all. So as to who they are, I think that one of the first things we have to do is to learn how to keep that in useful question. In other words, it's a question that you don't jump to answer, and you don't say, well, these are demonic and these are angelic and these are reptilians, I don't like them. These are grays, they're kind of creepy but sort of okay. The little trolls were funny until they got scary, etc., and so forth. I've had all of those experiences. That's why I said that. We need to instead to look inside ourselves and ask, who am I? And once I'm beginning to really find myself, I will also find a way of approaching this that makes sense to me in my life, in all of our lives. Our dead are not dead, and they are very heavily involved in this process. Let me go back now and sort of change to the zodiac. I know it's a sudden change, but that's okay. We're just coming off of the age of Pisces. Pisces is a little fish swimming in the waters of life. The little fish is fed everything he needs by the waters of life, the earth. Now, the earth, the little fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, the waters of the womb begins to become too small for the little fish. And what do you know? The earth begins to break her waters, and we start to go down the birth canal. And this definitely feels like we're dying. And in a certain sense we are, because we are dying to our old selves and our old reality. That is the end of the age of Pisces, and the age of Aquarius comes along, and what do you see? The water carriers pouring the water out, because we are being poured out onto the shore. We're still a little fish. And who these beings are, to group them together as a group, and they have many different ways of approaching us, many different concepts of what we are and who they are, etc., and so forth, including our own dead. They're midwives. They're midwives to the birth of man.
Thank you, Whitley. Very nice. So Barbara, in your work, have you seen an evolution from working with abductees, contactees, as a kind of an awakening process happening, or are you getting the same kind of things you've seen all along?
I've seen a lot of awakening amongst people. I started doing this work of regressing people to extraterrestrial encounters in 1991, and it's been a lot of people, well over 2,000, and some of them have had a lot of regressions amounting to, about 4,000 regressions, I think. So I've really seen a lot, and not only are there many, many different kinds of beings, whom we call extraterrestrial beings, coming to Earth, but they all have different agendas. So it's very difficult to sort of make blanket statements about the whole phenomenon. But in all of this work, all of these years, I have seen people go from tremendous fear, which I could certainly understand, at having beings coming into the room or making their car stop and then being taken away to some mysterious environment and all kinds of things being done to them. So I think there was a lot more fright in the early years of doing this work in the 1990s and the earlier 2000s. But in the last several years, last few years, I should say, more and more people have been coming aware that they've had these kinds of experiences. And now, more than ever, people are coming to know, wanting to know more of the meaning of these experiences and what is the larger picture going on here. And many of these beings who come to us are interdimensional beings. So that's opened up the whole subject of us and what are we, and are we interdimensional beings, and then bringing in the whole spirit aspect of things, as you very well know, Whitley,
Yes.
with Anne, and I've known from people dear and near to me who've deceased, and that whole realm is very conscious and awake, aware, alive, active. So a lot of people have been coming who want to know more than anything, not only about their experiences with these other beings from other realms, including extraterrestrials, but mainly knowing what is their main reason for being here in this life.
So maybe you agree with what Whitley's saying. It's like we're being birthed into a new consciousness, a new...
Yes, I definitely think so. And it's a joy for me to meet person after person. There are a lot of you here of this type who are really recognizing that we are so much more than just these human beings living in human bodies in this one lifetime. I began all of this regression work in past life regression therapy for several years before getting into the extraterrestrial part of it. And now the whole work, the whole outlook is becoming so much more multidimensional. And the fact that we are all here, chosen by our souls, as I see it. This may develop as I go further, but I see it that we are ongoing, continuing souls, probably forever, as far as we know. And we do choose to come into these lifetimes. And it certainly seems like there are some major themes that we come into this lifetime to work on. And there may even be one overall purpose for coming into this life. And we can find that out by this process that we call regression, because we can go back to the soul state of being just before coming into this lifetime and really seeing, knowing what our soul has chosen for us, for these major things and this major purpose to work on in this lifetime. So with all this part of the work, I really do see that more and more people are growing into the larger picture, the larger consciousness that we all are and that is in existence.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Actually, what you said reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by John Mack, Professor Mack, who was a Harvard-trained psychiatrist who looked at abduction. He said, UFOs are like an outreach program from the universe for the consciously impaired. That's us. So, like, they are here to wake us up to something else, which I think really takes us to the heart of your work, Ray Hernandez, because what you started out was looking at the contact experience, and you realize that was only a piece of it. That was only a small portion of who we are as human beings. So the work you're doing now is in consciousness, taking and extending it. But what do you think about what Whitley and Barbara said, is the fact that we are waking up to, in a way, being a new species of awareness? How does that fit into the work of what you're doing?
First of all, for the folks that do not know who I am, I was part of a very large group of mainly PhD academics with researchers like Barbara, like Kathleen Martin, Mary Rodwell, Denise Stoner, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, which grouped together the academics that were interested in this topic with the people that had their boots on the ground. And what we did over a 5-year study is we did the world's first comprehensive academic research study of individuals that have had UFO contact, but also contact with non-human intelligence. And we published our data findings from over the 5 years of our research in an 820-page book titled Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And much of the data from our book contradicts what is circulating in materialist mainstream ufology. Now, to address your question, I totally agree with what Whitley said and with what Barbara said. And let me start addressing that response by posing several questions to folks here. The field of near-death experiences, what year did that come into prominence? That was 1975 with the publication of Dr. Raymond Moody, Life After Life. Okay? The UFO contact experience, when did it really take off, even before the internet?
You mean with Whitley's book or with Betty and Barney Hill?
I would argue with Star Trek.
With Star Trek.
All of a sudden you had all these people talking about beings, space, other planets, other dimensions. Okay, and then people...
I was obsessed with that show.
Got captivated. Again, when did that take place? We're talking about the early 70s.
Which was the last thing?
With Star Trek.
Oh, right.
Okay, so the UFO and the space people and all of that really launched with Star Trek. Out-of-body experiences. When did Robert Monroe begin to publish?
It was probably the 70s also, right?
In the 70s. Now, is that a coincidence that 3 of the major, what I call, and our group calls contact modalities are the different ways that humans are piercing the veil and having contact with non-human intelligence. I would argue the 3 major ones are UFO contact, near-death experiences, and out-of-body experiences. Is a coincidence that all 3 of them became known to humanity, and we're talking before the internet age, okay?
Yeah.
Pretty much within...
Travis's experience was 75 as well.
Yeah, there were, that's also when close encounter experiences began to emerge, because Travis's experience took place then, the Pascagoula experience took place then, and the Betty and Barney Hill experience became known in that era.
So it sort of goes along with what Whitley said, the age of Aquarius is 60s.
Let me
Go
get
ahead.
to that point, okay?
Sure.
Now, my personal experiences have been orchestrated, okay? The intelligence that were interacting with me, they put things sequentially in place. Some of the people that know about my personal experiences know that these were orchestrated experiences. Whitley would probably say the same thing. Barbara would also agree to that. She's nodding her head, okay? That a lot of these experiences are orchestrated experiences. That means we're dealing with an intelligence that's able to manipulate space-time.
Do you think this experience tonight is orchestrated?
It's all orchestrated.
All right.
Now,
Welcome.
what I'm getting at is that what our survey revealed, and this is a survey of over 4,200 people from over 100 countries, was that 85% of these individuals totally transformed themselves from when their first experiences started to the very end, okay? Once you've had an out-of-body experience, you know you're not flesh and blood. You know you're much more complicated than that. You know you're a spiritual entity. Once you've had a near-death experience, you realize that there is life after death, that you're not just, bones. Once you've had these UFO contact experiences, a vast majority of people, the overwhelming number, are having diverse paranormal experiences.
Right.
For example, 80% have had out-of-body experiences. So these individuals go through this metamorphosis. That's the word. It's a process. You start off as a cocoon, not as a cocoon, as a caterpillar. The metamorphosis process is the cocoon period, and you come out as a butterfly, okay?
We're still in the cocoon now, right?
Well, for the individual experiencers that have had many years of these experiences, they're totally different. Right. They don't fear death. You don't fear death, you don't fear death, I don't fear death. Almost anyone here doesn't fear death. Less egotistical, less materialistic, more loving, more ecologically friendly, okay? You're more consciously aware, okay? These are all changes that take place at the experiencer level. So I think what's taking place is that humanity is being awakened to our multidimensional reality. That we are not just flesh and bone, that there is, as some people might call, a spirit world, that aspects of it, but basically that we continue after death, and that we as humans are much more complicated than what our material reality leads you to believe.
So we have to redefine ourselves as human beings. I mean, who we think we are as humans.
And that's what I think is taking place. I think it's taking place now in our generation, and all of us that have agreed to come here at this time period have a role to play, everyone here on this board, to awaken humanity to this new paradigm that we are multidimensional beings, that we're interacting with a diverse array of non-human intelligence via consciousness, which we still know almost nothing about.
Right.
So I agree with both.
Thank you. I want to talk to the orchestra leader here, but I will talk to J.J. Hurtak, who in a way has been through that cocoon process and has come out and has had some transhuman experiences. And what are we becoming, J.J., Dr. Hurtak? Because you've seen the scope of multiple dimensional realities. Where are we going?
We are forging a new anthropology. I would call it Homo Universalis, universal humanity. We're realizing that we have cosmic dimensions. We were multidimensional beings. In my research with colleagues at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, it was very clear years ago through government-sponsored studies that we had also the ability of non-local energy coordinations and consciousness projection. So we are, Desiree and I, involved for many years now with contact experiences of the fourth kind and the fifth kind, and with the higher non-physical, spiritual, interdimensional levels of cosmic intelligence.
So what does the new human being look like then that we're becoming?
So, he passes the baton to me. Basically, we are able to do more with who we are. I think that's really important for all of us, so that we are never at a loss for being able to manifest reality. So if we want to heal something, if we want to manifest something, we're more and more empowered to do that. But one of the good things about being here in the physical dimension, if I can say, is some of our thoughts are not necessarily what we want to always manifest. So we have to learn. This is kind of, Dr. Hurtak calls it schoolhouse earth. We're learning what to do with our energies, and we're doing it in a way, yes, we manifest really negative things sometimes, but for the most part, hopefully it's not affecting whole worlds. In some cases, of course, it is. But can you imagine if you have that power, what would you do with it? And I think that's the real questions that we're going through now. If we have the power to heal, if we have the power to make war, if we have the power to love, if we have the power to destroy, what are you doing with your energies? And those beings on the other side have those powers. They also have a consciousness ability, which is beyond what we have developed to date. But
this is unconditional use of power, unconditional use of love, unconditional use of the power of the higher mind. So is there a space law system out there? Are there guidelines for the cosmic who's who? These are questions that bring us all together, and I highly respect those on this panel as having the patience, but also having the humanistic side of recognizing that we must keep our compassion for life. We must keep our higher interest on a much higher level, serving all humanity rather than the elites of technical knowledge or insiders of the deep state who want things to play out according to a certain direction. So we're at a critical crossroads. We must keep the doors of the schoolhouse and windows of the schoolhouse open for the greater teachers coming this way, but also realize that we are a part of the teaching of the avant-garde.
Yeah, we have to be the example of the higher consciousness. We have to be the new human beings. So I want to ask Travis, so what Ray says about it sort of all being set up and coordinated, did you feel that about your experience, or did you feel like, oh, I'll just pass that light and go down the road?
I do. And it was, this coincidences that are too great to be mere chance. The synchronicities, it seems too much to be.
Like what, if you want to share?
Pardon?
What kind of synchronicities? What coincidences?
Many things. It seems to be by design rather than accidental, and including what I was talking about earlier about sightings. People, we can't imagine that these beings are suddenly, I got spotted by a human being again. Dang, no, it's much more deeper than that. To go on, I think that if you see one as an adult, and you saw one as a child, they know it's you. And they not only know they're being seen, you're actually being shown.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate exhibition for the purpose of bringing us to a state where we can interact with them in a non-destructive fashion. The power that they were referring to, we all know that's intrinsic to an extremely advanced intelligence, the power. And the mere fact that they continue to exist is proof that they've overcome evil and are using this power in a positive way, because otherwise they would have destroyed themselves. The mere fact that they're still there tells us this is not some evil plot to take over the earth. It's all about getting us ready for a better future.
I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but what do you think your life would have been like if you didn't get out of that truck? Do you ever think about that?
Oh, yes, and I felt a tremendous regret for what was lost, and I wish I had not got out of that truck. And all I can do is try to make something good come of it. I'm stuck with it. I tried walking away from it, and it only made things worse. So,
but how have you expanded as a human being because of this?
I think it's definitely forced me to grow in many ways, and in trying to help others who are facing the trauma. But just doing these battles on a personal level, and the people around me, the other crewmen and whatnot, it's all been very educational in terms of just coping and growing in a way that's going to be constructive rather than destructive.
Do you think maybe you were a test case? Okay, let's take this guy who's cutting down trees and let's see how he can handle the social pressure, because I think that's worse than what happened to you with the ETs, the attack by the media on you. So,
well, I don't know what's worse, being a test case or the result of an accident. I don't know, but either way, it's not what I had planned for my life.
No, but look how many more people you've met than just hanging out in the woods. No, I think it's been fascinating. No, for you to come out and show what human beings are made of, that you can stick by the truth. I mean, don't you feel maybe a sense of responsibility to the experience itself?
Oh, definitely. It's given me an overview of humanity and the problems that exist for us all and the ways that various people attempt to cope with it. So it's been definitely a laboratory of experience, a great overview of a much broader perspective on humanity than I ever would have had.
What about the spiritual perspective that Whitley and Barbara, has that come to you?
Yeah, and people very often ask me about how does this figure into religious questions, and I always say, well, I think I'm more of a spiritual person than a religious person, and spirituality has to do with a level of understanding and stuff that has less to do with organized religion than with the kind of growth that we all are experiencing, and by all I mean on the entire planet.
Well, thank you. And do you want to share about some of the other revelations you may have gotten since that first contact?
That's deep.
Okay, well, we're here. We're a deep crowd. I think we are. Yeah. We're on your side, Travis.
Fire in the Sky Book 2.
Fire in the Sky Book 2, okay. Oh, just a little.
No, seriously, we are going to do a remake of the original movie. I want to get away from Hollywood's invading monsters take on this and reach more towards the understanding I gradually came to. It's entirely different. I still want to communicate the trauma that it was, but explain that it was a misunderstanding, that I didn't truly understand what was happening. And yes, it was the most horrifying, traumatic experience of my life, but only because I lacked understanding.
Right. Yes. And I think what we're trying to do in the panel is to bring understanding, so when you are confronted by whatever level of consciousness that Ray is talking about, you can meet that as a spiritual being instead of running, because I think we're the same as whoever's ever out there on a soul level. So I think this is one of the reasons for gathering in groups like this, that Neil put this together. So thank you, Travis. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, Phil has had a vast amount of experience and has studied the esoteric literature. So within the esoterica that the metaphysical literature you studied, how do you fit this sort of conversation in there?
Well, I prepared something pretty special. We all seem to be searching for something that was lost, and in order to connect us with the ongoing moment of creation, which is, I think, why we're here, where every moment of every day, or speaking for myself, in contact with extra, meta, ultra-terrestrial intelligence. I've concocted a little exercise here to connect us with that ongoing moment of creation and hopefully a true contact experience with higher intelligence. If you could close your eyes and breathe easily and gently. Since this is about consciousness and everything is consciousness, it's to the extent that we're conscious of the fact that everything is consciousness. This is the trick. Breathe easily and gently, and as an homage to everyone that's on this panel and everyone that's in this audience today. In the name of Yahweh, Yod-He, Vod-He, Divine Father, Mother, God of gods, He who is, because I will tell you as I start, the shape and geometry of these particular thought forms can free gravitationally trapped light. We don't always have to be here. He who is, she who is, always was, and always will be, Ho on kayen kai ho er kanominos, issuing from the first mystery. All of us who've issued from the first mystery, Proton Mysterion, in the name of the sons and daughters of light, B'nai Or, B'nai Elohim, sons and daughters of light, Voi Photos, we focus our love and grace now on the meta-substance of divine thought forms, the divine names of the living God, crystallizations as we all are of the creative thoughts of God, cast down, many of us from the regions of negative space, but all of us from the true treasury of light. And we remembered that the shape and geometry of thought forms can free gravitationally trapped light. We live always aware or unaware within the vibration of God's names, ET, MT, ultra-terrestrials, multi-dimensionals. Having no thought devoid of ourselves as divine creations. The Shekinah, the presence of God, who lost her name. We've all looking for our true names. We're lost in the wilderness, orphans of the storm, lost brides, bridegrooms, forgotten princesses, sleeping beauties, clothed in black. Now is the time of the awakening of the beauty in each and every one of us. With no eyes, now we return in brilliant white radiance. We are the synthesis of all the sacred names, fully conscious when the temple in man and woman is rebuilt in memory of her. She returns with the ecclesia of the spiritual Israel from a state of exile in the lower worlds, passing through the worlds of chaos. She returns now, she who has bound us, the manacles of our lower thought forms, as Blake said, now returns as the liberating angel, liberating matter from its bondage in the lower worlds. And as we master our own names, the Baal Shem, we become what's known as the Rokah Ba'arabat. We're the riders of the storm. We ride through crystalline Hekaloth channels, white and black holes, to penetrate the magnetic veils that separate us from the fullest experience of ourselves, to be fully conscious, to be fully self-aware and self-conscious, no longer separated from our parent source. The name is the rose, a rose among thorns, the dove of peace. At the time of Tikkun, we are God's holy sparks.
Thank you, Phil. I guess you can't really follow that with much, can you?
Sure you can.
Okay. All right. So, Jason, it's up to you to pull it all together.
You're good to switch seats.
But really, what is your take on this new being we're becoming? And in a way, you're almost halfway there.
Well, what I will say is, as I look back at my experiences, which have been happening my whole life, I could tell you that there is some type of intelligence out there that is basically testing us at the individual level. And it's our responsibility to actually walk that path ourselves. There's really nobody here to really help us. And I believe this is the way that we're going to evolve and move forward, is that we have to learn how to navigate this multidimensional world. We have to learn how to navigate these spiritual astral realms. And there are many of them with many different beings, and it's extremely confusing. I call it the real birth. Once you're birthed in the out-of-body experience and you start to navigate these new worlds that open up to you, you come in contact with many types of beings. And there are beings that will come to you that look like angels, and they're not angels. There are beings that will come to you that look like your family or your friends, and they're not your family and they're not your friends. Because certain beings can take many different forms. And you have to learn how to see in that world with a different eye, with a different feeling. And if a being will come to you and speak to you, it's usually a test. And you have to kind of learn how to navigate. So if a being comes to you and you perceive that being to be dark or negative, is that you putting your belief system on that being? If it comes to you a beautiful being, are you putting your belief that that's a beautiful being? So you have to kind of let go of all these beliefs that we've been taught and start to learn how to navigate new worlds. So it's like we're a baby being birthed into these new things, but our teachers are this higher guidance that are allowing us to see how far we can go, how many steps will we take in these new worlds, or are we going to get afraid and step back?
So you're asking us to become aware of the sense of self. I think in a way everyone is saying that. What is the emanations of the being, the eternal being that we are? How do we, when we start to get that sense of that inner self, we then get to even ground with these, whoever these beings are?
Yes, and what I've come to understand is it's something very important, is that we play all roles on all levels.
What does that mean?
It means that, let's say a being will come to teach me a lesson. Let's say it's a very hard lesson. I can't tell you how many times I've died in the astral world, but I'm still here. But that being, I may consider it to be a horrific experience or a very negative experience. But after I look back at that experience, I know that it was a part of myself teaching me a great lesson in that world. So then when it actually manifests and happens to me again, I know exactly the way to handle that situation. And you get this kind of control, is the only way I could describe it. You become, you get a strength in these worlds where you can actually start to control the situations. So when you're first dropped into these worlds, it's almost like you're being pulled to places, you're getting used and abused and hurt, or your energy is being taken. And eventually when you learn how to navigate and protect yourself, you get to a point where that will stop. And if something does come, you have this type of strength and control in those worlds that it took many, many years of being in those worlds to get to that point.
I think that's what Ray's study has proven in a way with the contact abduction experience, right? You said people started off as negative and then they've turned it around through their kind of experiential and see these contact modalities as a positive thing. And well, that takes me to Whitley Strieber again. You started the whole thing with no, but what I want to also ask you, Whitley, is one of the things that was said to you, or you remember hearing, I'm not sure how it was, but there's a new world coming if you can take it.
Yeah, that comes from Colonel Philip Corso, who I met at the 50th anniversary of the Roswell incident in Roswell. And he had just published a book about his experiences in this, and this was one of them. And I thought that it was, immediately thought it was authentic, because This phrase, a new world, what happened was he found himself in a direct confrontation with an entity that was trying to leave. I don't know how true this part of the story is, and I'm sure he doesn't either, because as Barbara knows, it's very hard to make sense of these things when they happen. You have to pull it out of your own experience, and what happened may not have anything to do with anything you've ever known. So you have to sort of hope you put it together correctly, and that's how Phil took this. He had been, it was in a situation where there were ETs or something in a cave that was wanting a radar turned off so they could leave, and they couldn't leave with this radar turned on. And he heard in his head that they needed this, and he said aloud, I think this is the correct story, they needed it for 10 minutes, and he said, 10 minutes is a long time. In my business, it could be forever, because he's a military man. And what's in it for us? And the answer was, a new world if you can take it. Now, the rest of this, his story, may or may not be correct, and I may not even be relating it correctly. It's been a long time since I read the book. But that sentence is the truth.
But
go ahead.
no, that's only if we don't evolve, if we can take, if we're in this evolutionary process.
Yeah, it means a lot of different things. A new world if you can take it, that is to say, if you can bear it, not easy. If you can wrest it out of our hands, and they will not let us have it unless we can take it from them. And so it has at least those two meanings. And my experience of the few things the visitors have said to me is that they've always been packed with multiple meanings, or with no meaning at all. Like the time I was having the communion tour, and I was just struggling so, and suddenly I saw 3 of them in my bedroom in our country house in upstate New York, and I immediately said, how am I doing? Because I was going out there and getting beat up ruthlessly on television and the radio and everything. It was horrible. And they all answered at the same time with different answers, and I couldn't understand a word of it. And then they disappeared.
Was it a good thing? Were they happy about how you were doing?
I don't know what they were. I do know, though, that they were. I have been a big practical joker in my life, and the biggest joke I've ever been involved in is the one that's been played on me by the appearance of the visitors.
But what about the fact that, in a sense, we are becoming the ETs? I mean, I had an experience of you, Whitley, after a lecture where I sort of saw you transform. I don't want to give away any secrets, but your eyes flash. Okay, we won't.
No, go ahead. You've started now.
No, I'm saying we are all becoming a sort of ET, because we actually always were not of this earth totally. That's my experience.
Well, look at the planet and look at us. The planet has violent seasons. During the period of its extreme cold, the last period of extreme cold, known as the Ice Age, what happened to us? All of our hair fell out. We ended up naked. Naked, we had to figure out how to clothe ourselves. We were in a situation where there was very difficult to get food, and we had to organize into societies in order to do that. And we still aren't completely integrated into this place. Whether we came here or dropped here or evolved here and had a series of terribly unfortunate experiences, I don't know. But here we are, naked and alone.
Naked and Afraid, like the show, right?
What show?
There's a show on television, Naked and Afraid.
I don't watch much television, but I take your word for it.
So, okay, we're here, and now what?
Oh, let's ask them. The rest of the panel probably has ideas about now what.
No, but I think we're evolving. That's what I'm getting the sense of, that everyone has a piece on this.
Well, I think we are too. I think that there is a tremendous amount of evolutionary, but like the last time, about 12,000 years ago, something big hit this planet. Big. And that's the era of the floods and all of you know what happened in this continent then, and this is not speculative, this is ordinary geology, you learn it in college, is whatever happened, there was a fire that literally covered three-quarters of the North American continent. And then there was a flood because the ice melted, the Laurentian ice sheet melted right after the fire.
Robert Schoch talks about this.
And it flooded the whole continent. And then as that water receded, the ash and the plankton that had been on its surface settled into the mud, and over the years this became known as the black mat, and you can still find it all over. In fact, not too far east and north of here, you'll find, if you dig down about 11 or 12 feet, there'll be this line of blackness, and that's the black mat left over from that period. And that's just a little bit of what happened. All over the world, there's stories of these floods. Huge numbers of people were wiped out. The bizarre events that took place in the human experience, in the human mind, such as the Göbekli Tepe, where all of these dolmens were created over a long period of time and then intentionally buried. And they've only uncovered a few of them. There's a huge number of them out there. Or Stonehenge was built. You know how long it took to build Stonehenge? It took 500 years. Now, can you imagine us in our culture building something for 500 years? Of course we couldn't do it. But the tremendous shock that hit us then is going to be repeated. It's going to happen again.
Unless we evolve.
The shock is going to make us evolve. The shock will hit us. We evolved then. We went into that situation in one state and came out of it in another. The same thing is going to happen this time.
Let me get, okay.
It's not going to be pretty, but it is going to work, believe me.
Well, JJ has something to say. JJ, you have a comment, and then I'll go down the panel.
Back 45 years ago, we spoke of cataclysmic geology. Desiree and I published reports on the rapid melting of the North and South Pole, 15 times faster than the model suggested at that time in the early 70s. The scientific establishment ignored all of the warnings that we gave. We're headed for what I would call a roller coaster ride, so we have to fasten our seatbelts. But we will survive. We've got help upstairs.
Right.
But we have to be aware that the scientific community has to change or reevaluate its ontology as to what is the meaning of truth, what is the meaning of science, what is the meaning of evolution, because we are multidimensional beings waking up in a vast and living, loving universe if we follow the higher paths.
Yeah, and exactly. So many people feel the extraterrestrials started coming here again, even though, of course, they've been coming for thousands of years because of the nuclear bomb blast, because that's why they were seen often around the Trinity site, and they've been seen in other places. That's one aspect, but what Whitley is also saying is, we agree with, that because of what we would call climate change or environmental changes, they're also coming. And according to our work, and specifically the Keys of Enoch, they've been the ones giving us the information for the last 45 years to speed up our science and our information and our wisdom, and that includes archaeology and astrophysics, so that we can be prepared for this handshake that we need to be prepared for. So because of these changes, and as what Whitley is saying, we really have been given this information, and so now we have to be able to use it.
Alpha and Omega, the archaeological wonders of the past civilizations that were here on Mother Earth, and the Omega minus knowledge of future civilizations that we'll be connected with as we become cosmic citizens.
So you say it's really time we have to grow up and take responsibility for our mess. Yeah.
Right. And do a dance while we grow up.
Do a dance?
Cosmic dance, like the ancient Vedas speak of.
Okay.
Vedas,
But-
Sanskrit text.
I also wanted to find out how much are we evolving into the ETs themselves? Like in your work, Barbara, do you see more of a merging of us with what people say? Is there contact experiences with those beings that are making contact with us?
Oh, I think a lot of people are receiving information from the extraterrestrials and perhaps other dimensional beings as well. I mean, we hear about downloads of information. It's happening with a lot of people whom I know, and the downloads could happen when they're sleeping. Sometimes the longer, really detailed download seems to be happening when people are so deeply asleep that they cannot be awakened by whomever is sleeping with them and would like to wake them up. Sometimes it happens when people are meditating or just driving or walking, going about their daily lives. But a lot of people are getting information about physics. There's a man I know in the Los Angeles area who's, for about a year or so now, has been getting downloads about what he calls advanced physics, and he never had any background at all in physics. And he's getting information about a new system of mathematics. This is just one example of many, but many people are getting information of a more spiritual nature, and some are getting information about health situations, health advices, and so forth. So I think there's really a lot of this. Maybe it's always been happening. I
don't think it's always been happening. I think we've been asleep and now somebody's waking us up. That's my...
It certainly seems like that. And more, look at all the people here. There are more and more people going to gatherings like this because they are awakening and opening up. It's really, really very exciting.
Whitley,
what I don't see so much, though, is the really young people. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't see teenagers and people in their 20s particularly.
I'm almost 40.
Oh, you're not millennial.
Yeah, but you know,
Yeah.
that worries me too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I was in my 20s, I had no interest in any of this. I only had an interest in one thing, girls. And booze. Booze was interesting too.
Well, you're from Texas, so...
Marijuana probably would have been, but it was illegal then. But, you know, I mean, they're in a different headspace. But what we do need to see is more people in their 30s and 40s and so forth. And when I look out across this crowd, frankly, I see a lot of you are in that age group. So good. You know, I think this is working fine. I'm not so concerned about it. I mean, if there were a bunch of 20-year-olds in here, we might be in considerable amount of trouble.
Really? But I think we're being forced to evolve. We're being pressured. Travis, what were you going to say?
Well, you know, many people are coming out to these sorts of events, and yes, they're awakening, but not to discover a monolithic truth.
Right.
What they're awakening to is a search and a questioning. And, you know, we need to be wary of an orthodoxy. This is the way it is. I've been to hundreds of these over the years, and I noticed that there are so many different takes on the things, and many of them contradict each other. So it's what we're doing is sorting it out and deciding, you know, what's valid, what works, how it all fits together. And so it's you know, it's a process of refinement. It's the nature of growth that we're all going through. It's inevitable. It's a part of life. Life is an improvement and a refinement that
You see, you have learned a lot since you've been contacted. You really have. Because I think that's really smart, that there are no absolute we can't say, this is how it is, and say, someone has the answer. You're right, we have to find it.
Well, one of my favorite sayings lately to people that come to me and say, here's the whole UFO picture from bottom one end to the other, and it doesn't agree with 10 others,
Right.
I just ask them, how do you know this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
What verifiable facts then can you direct me to where I'll be as certain of that as you are? And that's where I get, well, I'm searching too. I don't have
important.
answers. I try to label things that are my opinion as, well, that's just my opinion. That's just what I
I
think.
think that's very important. Let's talk to Phil, who has the answers. Okay, Phil, tell us.
You think so? No. we're all awakening. The memory is coming back. We're all reawakening. We've all been like those sleeping beauties. And remember, all the ways they tried to awaken Sleeping Beauty, only one thing worked. Remember? The prince kissed her. It was the kiss of peace. And it's good to remember that our word kiss comes from the Scottish Gaelic word caith, which means to appear without disguise, to be genuine, to be authentic. And listen, and when the memory comes back of who we are, who we were, and who we will be, this is all happening now. We can't help but be experiencers. When that memory comes back, there's going to be memories of joy and memories of pain. And memories of and things that we'll have to feel, we'll have to forgive ourselves for. We'll have to make apologies. Isn't that true? Apology comes from the word apollo. It means not many. So when you apologize, you're reaffirming the oneness. And I think it's said in the Pissa Sophia, progressive apology places you in a position of having never been separated from the source. Connecting with the ongoing moment of creation. This is what I think our ultimate destiny is to connect with that ongoing moment of creation, to remember. In our lifetimes, we will know the fullness of what we are. In our memories, in our times, we will have the full revelation of who we are and who we were meant to be, and where we come from and where we're going from here. Always home.
Pissa Sophia, the lost teachings of Jesus from the ancient Coptic text.
But I think there's a quickening. I think the times are at hand. There is a speeding up, a quickening, probably since 1987 or 2012, whatever time clock.
The 70s, don't forget.
The 70s, it all did begin in the 70s after the age of Aquarius, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And we're moving into this time where the old ways are dropping away. You could see that in the media and politics. Something old is dying and something new is trying to be born. And that's why I think, Ray, you're so fired up about this work. It's it feels like you're compelled to. It's like beyond you. You know what I'm saying? It's like something is pushing through you to deliver this message, this findings. Do you feel that in your own work?
Well,
it seems like that to me.
I usually don't talk about my personal experience.
You can. We're among friends.
Yeah,
there you go.
I had a conversation with Whitley earlier, and I told him some of my more crazier experiences, and his tongue was wagging out as well with some of the stories I told him. But basically, I was shown all of the contact modalities, how it works in consciousness.
But you're compelled to do this. You're like driven. You're on fire.
Because like everyone else, all of us on this table have a mission. And the mission is to continue waking humanity. And initially we started with gathering data on the UFO contact experiences.
Right, but I just want to say it came out of nowhere for you. You were just a lawyer, whatever, and then all of a sudden, boom.
When you have your wife disappear right in front of you.
Is that what happened?
And you have your dog, who you were going to be euthanizing later that afternoon, rematerialize 45 minutes later after you've been put to sleep. The wife is dancing in the middle of the living room saying,
you have no idea.
Hallelujah.
He'll get to, at some point in his life, a willingness to tell his personal stories.
Yes.
And listen, you expect to just have the tops of your head blown off and sent into the stratosphere. This guy had, I mean, he had experienced an extraordinary shock of consciousness. And in fact, he's strangely enough still with us.
Well, because we needed someone like you and your passion to start to.
It lasted
reignite.
2.5 years.
Yes.
And just like most of the people in our survey, 37% viewed it as very negative. To me, it wasn't so much negative. It was just I couldn't deal with the ontological shock.
But you are dealing with it by.
And I got drunk for a whole week straight. Okay. After I had an experience of reincarnation, of missions, of past lives, of mission here on earth, you know, all this craziness.
Maybe you're a
And then
test case for
I
what's
got drunk
happening.
for a week straight, and then until they sent me another messenger to bitch slap me in the face to wake me up. And so.
Did you say bitch
So
slap
it's,
you in the face?
But, you know, look, I'm not the only one. There are literally tens of thousands of people that took our surveys, thousands of people, they're having these profound experiences.
Oh.
Most of the people that took our surveys, they never told anyone else.
Whitley's
They
saying
told a
something.
brother or a sister,
Yeah.
family member, no one else. Because why? Because they're too freaking crazy to tell anybody else.
Well, you know, you read the book that Anne put together. We got after communion. It was before email, fortunately, and we got thousands and thousands of letters. You know, probably 250,000 at least over a 5-year period, and I mean a lot of letters. And Anne was first. She was a very fast reader. I couldn't handle it. It was just the mail people would come with these huge bags and just pour them in the living room in the heaps. And she said, one day, she said, you know, I need a secretary. And I said, yes, you do. And she said, well, I'll find one in these letters. And I thought, no. I said to her, well, I'll call manpower. She said, no, I'll find one in the letters. And a few minutes later, she said, I found the secretary. And she hands me this letter, and it's from a lady who says in the letter that she's a singer and an actress. And I said, look, it says here she's a singer and an actress, Anne. She said, have you ever heard of her? I said, no. Well, look at the handwriting. It's the handwriting of a professional. I said, well, that could be true. She said, she also lives down the street. She's our secretary. Wait and see. She called her up, and she came 15 minutes later, 10 minutes later, she was at the house. She was an excellent secretary. They worked together for 15 years. Her name was Laurie Barnes, and you can read about her story in many of my books. It's one of the most extraordinary stories.
This is the acceleration of consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, my wife was just in it. She knew what she was doing from the very beginning. The minute she
And she still does.
She still does, exactly. I mean, she's doing this. She's all about this barrier between the living and the dead falling down. She's there on the other side working to make that happen right now. And when she died with intention and no fear. She didn't commit suicide. She let her body finish its work intentionally, and it was the hardest thing that ever happened to me in my life. Also the most beautiful and the most noble. As Annie was dying, I was in the other room, and I suddenly heard her voice say to me, Whitley, come in here right now. I am dying right now. And I went in, and she was almost in a coma. I mean, I think she was in a coma, but I had heard this in my head. I ran in, I lay down beside her, I put my hand on her heart, and I felt the last beats of my wife's heart. And then I saw her ascend, and it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. The color of blue was beyond belief. It was so beautiful. And she went up into it, looking down at me with this amused expression on her face. But a serious, amused expression, and For some reason, about an hour later, I decided to throw out her socks. I don't know why, and I went down and threw out her socks, and I heard her say, "Why are you throwing out my socks?" I said, "I don't know." The socks are still there. I put them back. They're actually, I bought other socks. They had thrown them already in the trash. I bought other identical socks and put them in there. I mean, it was a crazy time. Wild things were happening. It was all happening. It was kind of, I was kind of being short-circuited by the intensity of it. But God, what a wonderful experience. And this is what this is all about. This is what he keeps trying to talk about.
I'm trying
He's trying to get us to talk about, so I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
It's about this.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I could make a comment on that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Here I was, Ray Hernandez, total atheist, material rationalist. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences. Okay?
Yeah, do.
Yeah.
It's time, Ray.
Okay? I would have thought everyone here were a bunch of crazies. Okay? This intelligence, as we all talked about, this is all preordained. It's a setup job for you at an individual level.
It's an inside job, yeah.
Over a 4-month period, they transformed me from a total atheist, material rationalist. At the end of these experiences, they did it through a series of near-death related experiences, where after I saw this big, gigantic UFO that was 30 feet away from me, huge, it was like a football stadium, witnessed by my daughter and 3 friends for 45 minutes. Right after that, I saw a video on near-death experiences, okay? And I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? I immediately ordered like 20 books from Amazon. I spent the next 4 months increasing my time, but the last month, it was 12 to 18 hours a day, reading nothing but NDE books. All this time, the last month, my wife was gonna divorce me. You know, you're a crazy man. All you're doing is reading these books. You don't care about the family. I wasn't doing any of my work. I was at the point of being fired, okay? And
you were obsessed.
I wasn't taking a shower, okay?
That's a little obsessive.
I wasn't grooming myself, okay? I was a crazy madman. And my wife, you need to go to a psychiatrist. They got pills for you. They can take care of you, whatever. But all this 4 months, I never told anyone about near-death experiences, only my wife. Now, what are the statistical probabilities of the first 3 people you ever mentioned NDEs to? 3 days in a row, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All of them had NDEs. The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. The second one was this man, Max, at a church-related social function. And the last person was my father, okay? The first 2 people, the way I introduced it was a channeled voice that came out of my body. Excuse me, doctor, have you heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finished reading approximately 300 books on the topic. Many of them were written by medical doctors such as yourself, and it's a phenomenon that you need to know about. So immediately, I was like, I'm schizophrenic. I'm dual personality. I am going crazy. I got to go to the psychiatrist. And then I saw the doctor's eyeballs pop out like this, and I said, oh my God, I've offended the hell out of this woman. Now she thinks I'm crazy. She said, excuse me, doctor, I didn't mean to offend you. I apologize. I don't know why I said that. No, there's no need to apologize. How did you know I had one? Okay, then she goes on to tell me her NDE. Next, this person, Max, on Saturday, the very next day, finally, my father had the most profound NDE of any book I ever read.
And he never told you before?
He never told me, okay? He had spoke with my mother after he had come out of heart surgery, okay? And that was the only time they spoke about it. So I said, my father was like the Cuban Archie Bunker, okay? I said, I need to give this man some type of spirituality before he dies. He was bedridden. He was 85 years old, very, very sick, you know? So I need to tell him what happened on Friday, what happened on Saturday. Now, this was Sunday. He goes, that happened to me. I said, what? You know? Then he goes on, he says, remember when I had the open heart surgery for quadruple heart bypass? It says, I floated out of my body. And I saw all the doctors and nurses underneath me. And all of a sudden, a vacuum cleaner sucked me up. Okay? That he was going through a tunnel at 1,000 miles per hour, flying through there. Now, we're talking about Archie Bunker here, okay? Right. Cuban Archie Bunker. And then he went through this light, and then the light slowly dissipated, and then was his father, mother, and his brother, all deceased. Began interacting with him telepathically. And then he said, the next words that he said was that time doesn't exist. I said, what do you mean time doesn't exist? No, I was up there 20 or 30 years.
Wow.
I said, what do you mean 20 or 30 years? He says, that's how long it took God to show me my entire life. He didn't know the concept of a life review.
Wow.
Roughly 1 out of every 4 ND experiencers has a life review. He then said that he relived all of these experiences, not only inside his body, but inside the body of the other person that he had affected.
Wow.
And then after each of the experiences, well, first of all, God was not this guy on the throne with a long beard, okay? He describes it as a energy being, like a humanoid, but you couldn't tell any physical features. All communication was telepathic, okay? And then he said, after each of these, God would tell him, okay, my son, what did you learn from that? So he said, there is no hell, because God is pure love. He says, we're just here on this planet to learn how to love. That's all. I mean, I'm freaking out.
Wow. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for that.
I'm freaking out because this is my father telling me all of this.
I want to say something very briefly.
Okay, and then I wanted to get comments from...
Okay, yeah, just adding to what he said about love, one of the most extraordinary things that Anne said after she passed away is, enlightenment is what happens when there is nothing left of us but love.
Amen.
Thank you.
Remember that.
So, Jason, it's up to you.
And let me just finish that last point. On the way home from my father's house, I finally got it. Okay? I finally got it. I was so dense. I was such a materialist, rationalist type. I put down my windows, and for the first time in my life, I talked to God. And to these beings that I consider modern angels that were interacting with me. And I thanked them because I said, in a 4-month period, you have managed to transform total atheist, material rationalist and someone that doesn't have a belief. I don't have a belief. I have a knowingness.
Right.
That I'm an eternal spiritual being.
I think that can happen to the planet. I think that is,
that's
what
how
we
they
all
brought
can
me
go.
spirituality.
So, Jason, I
Yes.
just want to ask you, because none of this is unfamiliar. You've dealt with these realms, and sort of you were born with that awareness. So,
Yes.
talk
No, I
about
was
that.
born knowing past lives,
Right.
and even remembering transitions of dying, spending time in between and being born. Like, I remember those things. But what I want to say, because, wow, I can't really add so much to this panel, but what I've learned is that, we're talking about this kind of separation of us in the spirit world, and, these beings kind of laugh because the truth is we never left that place. We're living simultaneous existences. And as we're here, we're also there, and we're helping each other. And I do want to talk about simultaneous existence because we are having experiences in other realms, other dimensions, other worlds as what we would consider alien life or alien beings. And sometimes these beings are at a very high advanced level where they will come in their form to us to see how we're doing in human form. And it's like this kind of family intergalactic dimensional handshake of just checking up with ourselves. It really is ourselves. And when sometimes you're talking about the life review, there are times when we'll have these past life memories come to us, and we can be, our consciousness could be us going through the death process. And our consciousness at that exact moment goes into the people around it, and we also experience through their eyes the experience. So we can not only have our individual experience, but we start to blend into this knowledge that we see through all the eyes and affect everything around us. And when we have that awareness, it changes you almost immediately. And that's why when we have this contact experience, meet these interdimensional or alien beings or angels or guides, these things completely transform us, and we just know no fear in death. We exist always in different forms, in different consciousness. And like now I'm out talking about this stuff. But before, it was all bottled up. And it's not good to live your life with this stuff bottled up because it's going to make you very sick.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about that. Thank you. I'm going to take some questions. Phil, you had...
No, just I just want to thank you and thank the panel, and just
We're not finished yet. What?
Not-
What? Okay, get a microphone. yes.
not characteristic, but please send up a prayer for me. In December, I've been invited to CERN in December to talk about a paper that I wrote as an undergrad at Princeton that suddenly has reemerged. Last time I was there, I ran into an odetocron. You know what an odetocron is, how to run in? You know a crab louse? You know a crab louse under a micro? Imagine one 12 feet tall. And they're really nasty, so it's just send up a prayer for me. I'm hoping everything's going to be cool, but these things happen. Anyway,
Okay,
thanks.
thanks. No, we're just going to take a few questions from the audience.
Tell the odetocron.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
we only have about 5 minutes, 5 questions, 5 minutes.
Okay, as much as I love my ET brethren, I can't help but wonder why it is that they seem to be following some unwritten law of the universe that says the humans have to do it by ourselves and we have to take a step back even if they're suffering like crazy. 3 things in particular: the RV currency reset, the fact that whistleblowers can't expose things without government murdering them, and some people even getting attacked by direct energy weapons. Why can't the ETs step in and keep this stuff from happening? Why do they insist that we keep suffering and solve it ourselves?
I think we're here to solve it ourselves. We got ourselves into this mess, but what's...
Well, first of all, that's not...
I'll take that one.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Just the analogy. Use the analogy of your children. You can't live their lives for them. They have to learn these things on their own. Sometimes they'll fall and skin their knee or worse. But when you go live in their lives for them, you haven't helped them, you've hurt them.
Thank you. Whitley?
Yeah, there's been a lot of material injected into the scientific community in the past years. Unfortunately, a lot of it is still behind the classification wall, but it's going to emerge. And some of the most important material has recently come out in some scientists who have begun to talk about what happened to them. One of them is Dr. Edward Belbruno. Ed is a good friend. I met him some years ago, and he told me his story, and I said, Ed, you've got to tell that story. He said, I can't tell that story.
Yeah.
I said, well, tell it on my radio show anonymously and see what happens. Let your friends listen to it. And he did, and people were fascinated. And he's a very powerful man, so
Princeton,
he started to come out. And what happened to him was he was driving down a road in Wyoming and with his girlfriend at night, and they came upon this huge black thing that was hanging in the air above the road. And he's a scientist who works on orbital dynamics. And they watched this thing for a couple minutes, and it flew away, and all of a sudden, all these calculations came into his head. And this is a big guy. He is, and he realized that there was a satellite that was a Japanese satellite that was about to crash, and he could save that satellite with these calculations. And he did that and became a big hero in the field, and has gone on to revolutionize the whole field.
He's a Princeton astrophysicist.
And this is directly as a result of that. And there's much more happening, and much more will come out. And as we learn how to deal with this socially, so that people don't get savaged when they admit this happens to them, more will come out, because I know a lot of people in that community who have had similar experiences who are on the point of getting ready to say, yes, it happened to me too. It is happening.
It is. Desiree.
Right, so I just want to say, so it's really co-participation, which is, I think, what Whitley is saying. And I do believe that the extraterrestrials have done some things to help us that we don't even know of, like certain types of, satellites that are coming by, or we'd say meteorites. They've blown them up. They've been over Fukushima many times to try to neutralize the energy that's there. So there's things that are happening. Even Atucha, if you know, that's a nuclear power plant in Argentina. They're always seen around there trying to neutralize. But really, they want to give us the information. They want the co-participation, and they've been feeding us information, as Barbara, Willie, and we had said, for the last 40 years, and probably for the last several thousand years. So they really want that co-participation with us.
Yeah.
Nuclear weapon systems fired by the Soviets and Americans were intercepted by ETs. I know this from insiders. So all the way up the chain of command, we've been watched and we've been warned to not to take the technological slide to self-destruction, but to take the quantum leap towards self-realization that we are spiritual beings in human form.
I mean, I agree with Travis. We have to, help ourselves as well. No one's going to save us from the mess we created. They'll help, but they're not going to do it for us. Question.
Hi, my question for the panel has to do with artificial intelligence. In your travels and your work and your experiences, have you encountered what you would interpret as being artificial intelligence? And what was that like?
Anyone in particular want to?
Yeah, I can answer that. I can do that.
Oh, wait. Anyone else besides?
Oh, well, I'll just a quick comment. People ask me, did these beings, either type, look like robots to you? And my response is, well, if they were really designed by a technology to stand in the place of a living being, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And, that ultimately would be where AI and artificial intelligence would be headed. That, how would you know?
Phil, you have an answer for that? No? Desiree?
Intelligence I've encountered in my life has been pretty artificial.
The most intelligent, you didn't get that on tape. Most intelligence he's encountered has been artificial. Whitley, go ahead, Desiree.
I just want to say, as we worked with J. Allen Hynek in 1973, and he went to investigate the Pascagoula, Mississippi, October 1973. And when he came back, and this is a long time ago if you think about that, he said those beings that had appeared to the people there were robotic for sure. And there was robots also seen in the area of Russia. So there have been, pure robots that you can tell are robots also coming out of spaceships.
Okay, and you have a short comment?
Yeah, I have a very short comment.
We have one more
it is this, that it's not so much artificial intelligence that is the issue, it's artificial consciousness. Because a machine can be very intelligent, but if it's not conscious, it remains just a machine. Consciousness, as we shall find soon, is like a mirror that is reflecting you. And we can build machines that have that, and that will therefore be conscious. And when they become conscious, they will be ensouled as well.
The soul is the key here.
Yeah, and they will become ensouled because the soul will find that useful and will make that its life. And that's going to be interesting because then we will have created somebody.
Thank you. Okay, one more question here. Maybe two more. Okay, Sandra.
Hi, I want to thank you all for your wonderful expressions today and letting us know. So as someone who meditates, who is a spiritual being, who believes with all my heart, I would so love some contact. I would so love to be part of the experience that you're having, and yet, so far,
Well, it's
I'm waiting.
there is a method. I can explain it to you quite easily.
All right, so my question is, how do the rest of us who maybe are waiting and hoping for that experience participate or learn from you? Or how are we participating in this awakening and in this enlightenment if we're not actually having the same experiences?
Okay, Phil,
Just a real quick anecdote. I think my first marriage failed because I didn't realize that I was in the presence the whole time of an angelic. You know
Meaning your wife? She was no angel, I'll tell you that
we
much.
want contact without contact. No, this is serious. Without realizing that we're in each other's company all the time.
Okay.
And we are divine creations.
Friedrich Nietzsche is famous for having said, that which does not destroy me only makes me stronger.
Right.
But I have another quotation of his on my refrigerator. And what he said was, believing means not really wanting to know what the truth is.
Believing.
So my distinction is, what is the difference between believing and knowing?
Believing and knowing? Knowing, we know you're in this room, you don't believe it. Knowing is in-soul sort of awakening that of truth. Believing is make-believe. You could believe anything. It doesn't matter. So, did you have something?
Alan, if I could give her
please.
a practical response, because I get that question a lot. For me, what I can suggest is that in CE5, which is, I don't like that term, but people that go out in groups and try and initiate contact with non-human intelligence, usually in desolate areas, many of these individuals have a good hit rate, okay? You might have to go 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, but you eventually will be able to see, UAPs, UFOs, okay? There's a group that, unlike Stephen Greer, will do it for free, okay? Because Stephen Greer will charge you $3,500 to encounter some sand deserts, some bugs out there. So this group is called ET Let's Talk. And the 2 organizers are both experiencers, Costas Macraeus and Hollis Polk. And they run this organization called ET Let's Talk. And what that does is you would put your name or a fake name, you would put a zip code in there, and then it hooks you up with other people in your area. And then you could hook up with them and say, okay, let's go and do some CE5, in some remote area.
Okay.
And if people are sincere, if they put out love, okay, you might have to go multiple times, but eventually you will have contact.
You will have an experience.
That's my suggestion.
JJ?
So there are many levels of synchronicity and contact from the physical and non-physical. So stay open-minded and heart-centered, because what is necessary is not the contact experience, but what you do with the contact. Are you here to help humanity find new breakthroughs in food, in survival, sustainability, medicine? This is the whole aspect. It's the noumena, not the phenomena. It's the noumena, the higher wisdom that comes through, making you a pillar of light in the world that's going through vast and awesome change.
So I just say, watch your life to see the synchronicities, because sometimes it comes through many levels. I think Jason's probably experienced that on many times. We're all having those experiences. It's a matter of being aware of it in our conscious, not just our subconscious mind.
We have to really shut the mind off, and you could do that through meditation, but the best thing is you need to feel the awareness of the physical body. That's the key. You need to just shut the mind off and be able to feel what's going on in the physical body.
That's right.
And the chemistry in your brain will actually start to change, and you will enter into altered states of awareness and consciousness where those beings will just be waiting in those states for you.
You can look up the sensing exercise and just Google it, and it's a good place to start. I've been doing it for 50 years, but you don't have to do it that long anymore. It took 15 years. I didn't know the ETs had, or whoever they are, had any awareness of it. However, what it does is that it causes a change in the amount of light that your nervous system is emanating. It can be seen very clearly in other levels of reality. I learned during my talk, I mentioned that my wife wanted me to do it after she died, and it was because when I did it, she could see me, she could locate me. And if you get groups together and go out in the CE5 deals and do the sensing exercise together, you will attract attention. It's no longer difficult. Also, there's a ranch up in Northern California, or Washington State.
Trout Lake, Washington, yeah. St. James Gilliland, East City Ranch. You will see stuff there for sure.
That's another place you can go and do stuff.
So you're getting advice by a panel of experts. These people have devoted their life. Thank you. Okay, a quick question here, and then maybe this one. Go ahead.
So fundamentally, I believe that we live in a benevolent universe. When you mentioned CERN, it's like, whoa, I really came to my awareness. I just intuitively feel that that's not a beneficial project for, humanity. And is there an awareness, if it's prudent for us to be proactive in taking steps to stop actions that we're doing as a race that are detrimental to the sacredness of our planet?
I'm not sure how to answer that. We can talk about that later in private.
Okay, one last question right here. This guy has a burning question.
Thank you. It's a very deep topic, very deep subject. I know you guys are all brilliant with a variety of backgrounds and that sort of thing. But since do you guys ever have any technical issues where you differ on different aspects or different specific points that you guys kind of butt heads on? Or do you guys, do you have a common denominator and then maybe the numerator has some variations or variety of aspects or scopes or depth?
I would say that we certainly do have different takes on the whole thing, and that, one of the modalities of a panel like this is to try to get along and find where there's congruence. If we emphasize there's not a place for debate, we're just giving our different perspectives. So.
Yeah, and everyone has and there's many people that don't agree with the idea that it's about consciousness. There's many people that just into the hardware. I want to give a tribute to Stan Friedman, who's supposed to be here, who's one of the pioneers whose focus was mainly on the fact that there were craft visiting us. He became more spiritual, but there's a whole variety of opinions. What's happening here, I think, is an evolution of the contact situation. We're trying to connect the dots to create a bigger picture. So I want to thank everyone. Did you have something? Any final words? Yeah.
Well, one thing that Stan Friedman said is, when people ask him certain questions, he'd say, well, I have certain things I put in my gray box.
In your gray,
There's a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion because of it's either accept or reject, and it's not like that at all. You can have a verdict in a criminal case that says not guilty, and a lot of people don't understand that's not the same thing as innocent. Innocent is where they proved you couldn't have done it, someone else did it, or you were somewhere else. Not guilty simply means the state has not produced sufficient evidence to convict you. And the same thing with the defined in our terms, belief. Do you believe this? I refer to Nietzsche quote on that. If you say, I don't believe that, you're not saying I disbelieve it. That's an entirely different thing. And some people think, oh, you're splitting hairs there. But it's not the same thing at all. I haven't had enough time to think about that. That would be in my gray box. So it's not in my belief box. But I'm not saying I disbelieve it. I'm not saying it's false. I'm saying it's just not in the true box yet.
Yeah,
we're looking for truth. So
and we're developing a new language. Wait, Jason, and then Ray, and then we'll close.
I would just say that what we're doing here is a modern day campfire, and it's a peaceful space where we can actually just share our experiences openly with everybody, and we just take what we need to take from that experience. So we've been doing this forever. It's just different environments.
Right.
Yeah.
Ray?
I just want to say that I've worked with a very large group of mostly experiencers. Most of them were academics. And now we're forming a new organization with a different team of large group of academics. And all of us have this perspective that we're totally fucking clueless as to what the hell's going on. Okay?
That's the best way to sum it up, really.
Yeah. And also, if anyone comes to you with all the answers, run away. Run away.
Okay. Desiree, did you have something to say? All right. Thank you all. This is what the process of awakening looks like. Thank you all for being part of that. And stick around for Billy Carson. And I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm Alan Steinfeld for New Realities. Thanks for, enduring this and taking some of this truth in and making it your own experience. See you soon. New Realities. Look me up. Thanks.